Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jaya Udire Nashtaprayeshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavate Uttam Shloke Bhaktir Bhavatir Naishtiki Om Agyantimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधार श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे मुखं करोति वाचालं भंगुं लंघयते गिरिं यत्कृपातमो वन्दे श्रीगुरुदीनतारुणं परमानन्दं माधवम्. Okay, so the first 8 verses in the chapter were prayers by Hanuman, primarily by Hanuman, and we see that also Sugriv and Arishtasena are speaking, but primarily Hanuman, to Lord Ram in Kimapurusha, Varsha. And from verse 9, the next 7 verses are prayers by Narad Muni to Narayan Rishi in Bharatvarsha. Okay, so Sai Prabhu, if you can read the translation.
Hare Krishna. Sukadev Goswami continued, the glories of the Supreme Person of Godhead are inconceivable. He has appeared in the form of Narayana in the land of Bharatvarsha, at the place known as Badrikashrama, to favor his devotees by teaching them religion, knowledge, renunciation, spiritual power, sense control, and freedom from false ego. He is advanced in the opulence of spiritual assets, and he engages in executing austerity until the end of this millennium. This is a process of self-realization.
So Narad Muni is glorifying the mercy of Narayan Rishi, and from the description of the teachings, we can understand that it is mostly directed towards Gyanis. He says he favors by teaching them religion, knowledge, renunciation, spiritual power, sense control, freedom from false ego. So these are primarily endeavors in which the person on the Gyan mark engage, right? So from the Bhagavad Gita, we understand that the gradual progress on the yoga ladder is that one starts from, well, firstly one avoids vikarma, sinful activities, then one engages in karma or sakam karma, which is pious activities but with desires to enjoy. Then one progresses to nishkam karma. So this is based on the knowledge that you are not the body but the soul. From nishkam karma, one proceeds to the stage of Jnana Yoga, which is the stage of Atma Jnana. Earlier on, one acts on the understanding that one is not the body but the soul. In Jnana Yoga, one realizes that understanding. So one is actually situated in the self, right? So at this stage, the person is situated in Atma Jnana. The next stage is that of Paramatma realization, which is achieved by Astanga Yoga. And so when one is situated in Atma Jnana, that I am the soul, then one is no longer troubled by the pushings of the senses, and one has also control of the mind. So then one now is qualified to perform Astanga Yoga, meditation. And in Astanga Yoga, the focus now matures from that of Atma to Paramatma. So, Narayan Rishi's mercy is to help the Jnani to make progress to the stage of Astanga Yoga. Right. So this is, of course, a bona fide process of self-realization. So Prabhupada writes that it is impossible to realize oneself simply by absorbing oneself in speculation and material activities. So Prabhupada here is referring material activities, talking about the preliminary stage of karma, and then speculation is talking to the subsequent stage of jnana. Then he says one must be very serious about self-realization and practice austerity. So the important things to understand about these yogas are that they are stepping stones. So unlike Bhakti Yoga, which is the resting place, these yogas are stepping stones. If one simply stays in Karma Yoga, then that person is not going to make significant progress. If one simply stays in Jnana Yoga, then the person will not make significant progress. So they may attain some kind of achievement, right? So a Jnana Yogi may attain Brahman realization. But understanding that if the person's goal is God realization, Krishna consciousness, then one needs to progress from karma to jnana and from jnana to astana. So that's what Prabhupada says, one must be very serious about self-realization and the practice of austerity. So the practice of austerity is equivalent to Astanga Yoga, because Astanga Yoga, at least the initial 4 stages of Yam, Niyam, Asan, and Pranayam, they involve a lot of austerity. And later on, the process becomes more internal, right? So when the person is at the stage of dharana, dhyan, samadhi, so then the stage becomes more internal. But in order to be purified to reach that stage, a fair amount of austerities need to be performed. Another point to be noted in this verse is that it is said that the Lord appears in the form of Narayan in the land of Bharatvarsha. This does not refer to the Earth planet, right? So in the Bhumandal, the centermost dvipa is Jambudvip, and the Jambudvip is divided into 9 khandas, and the center one is or 9 varshas, sorry, and the center one is Ilavat Varsha. Then there's the Uttar Kuru Varsha, Kim Purush Varsha. So we have been seeing the prayers from each of these Varshas. This is now the 9th Varsha, the southernmost, which is Bharat Varsha. Now Bharat Varsha itself is divided into 9 khandas by mountains. And the southernmost khanda is Bharat Khanda. So Bharat Khanda is what is our Earth planet here. Now, one thing that is unique in Bharat Varsha, so all the 9 khandas in Bharat Varsha, is that this is the only place in the entire universe where the law of karma is active. So in all other places, the persons are essentially enjoying the results of their previous activities. But in Bharatvarsha, all the 9 khandas, they are able to perform activities that result in either pious or impious. So that's why Bharatvarsha is so potent. And if you look at it, then for all the jivas in the universe, there are only 2 destinations. One is back to Godhead, back to the spiritual world, and the second is Bharatvarsha. And these are the 2 destinations. Because somebody goes to Svarga, and when their punya, when their pious activities are exhausted, they've come down to Bharatvarsha. And from Bharatvarsha, they may again regain pious activities, impious activities. Somebody falls to hellish planets. There they burn their impious activities. What happens to them? They come to Bharatvarsha, right? Or they exit the universe, right? So they perfect their life from any planets, whether it's from Brahmalok and whether Satyalok or Tapalok. If they perfect their life, then they exit the planet, the universe. So two destinations for all the jivas in the universe, either the spiritual world or or the nine khandas of Bharatvarsha. Okay, so let's move on to the next verse, verse 10.
Sukadev goes, sorry. In his own book known as Narada Pancharatra, Bhagavan Narada has very vividly described how to work to achieve the ultimate goal of life, devotion, through the knowledge and through execution of the mystic yoga system. He has also described the glories of the Lord, the Supreme Person of Godhead. The great sage Narada instructed the tenet of this transcendental literature to Sarvajni Muni in order to teach those inhabitants of Bharatvarsh who strictly follow the principle of Varnashram Dharma, how to achieve the devotional service of the Lord. Thus, Narad Muni, along with other inhabitants of Bharatvarsha, always engage in the service of Narayana, and he chant as follows.
Okay, so this is a glorification by Sukadev Goswami of Narad Muni. And he says the great sage Narad instructed to Savarni Muni. Now, Savarni Muni is, Savarni Manu is the eighth Manu, right? So he's one that will appear in the future. Currently, we are under the reign of Vaibhava Manu, who is the seventh Manu. So Vivashvan, who is the sun god, he had his first wife, Sharanya. She was the son of Vishwakarma, daughter of Vishwakarma. And from her, he had various children. One of them was Vaivastha Manu. Now, there is a pastime that Sharanya was, she would feel very uncomfortable with the glaring effulgence of Suryadev. So every time Suryadev would approach her, she would be in distress. So in order to solve the problem, she created a replica of herself called Chaya. And Chaya was exactly like her. So she kept Chaya in her place, and she went to her father's place, where apparently she assumed the form of a mare, a female horse, and she was kind of living the life of a carefree life, right? So by the union of Suryadev and Chaya, then Savarni was born, and he becomes the eighth Manu. So when Sukadev Goswami says this, we can understand it one of two ways. One is he's talking about the future, that in future Narad Muni will instruct Savarni Muni, or he's talking about the past, that in the previous Kalpa, in the previous day of Brahma, when all the 14 Manus had already appeared, Narad instructed this to Savarni Muni, right? And one thing we know is that Bhagavatam is more concerned about the events and the significance as opposed to the timeline, right? So it could be either of them. So Narad's Pancharatra, it's a famous class of literature actually. So Pancha means 5 and Ratra means nights, right? So it refers to instructions spanning 5 nights, right? It could also means Pancharatra. So Pancha again means 5 and Aratra. So if you take the A and combine it with Ratra, so Ratra is darkness and Aratra is not darkness, which is light. So Pancharatra can also be considered to be the 5 paths of removing ignorance, right? And the acharyas talk about what these 5 paths could be. So in Vaishnav deity worship, these 5 paths are Abhigaman, Upadana, Ijya, Swadhyaya, and Yoga, right? So Abhigaman is, so these are all centered around deity worship. And we follow the Pancharatrik Vidhi for Archavigraha Seva. So Abhigaman is basically getting ready to approach the deity. Gaman means to approach closely. So this involves getting up in the morning, taking a bath, performing the morning prayers. And Upadan is collecting the materials for worship, setting the arti tray, preparing the bhoga, cleaning the area around the altar, doing the achaman. Then Ijaya is actual deity worship, that one does the offering of the bhoga, arti, dressing the deities, putting them to rest. That is Ijaya. Swadhyaya is essentially the study of the scriptures. Right? So Swadhyaya is studying by yourself or studying under the instructions of a guru. And the 5th yoga is in our day and age, yoga is Prabhupada says Harinam. It's Japa and Harinam. So these are the Pancharatra. These are the 5 methods by which darkness could be removed. According to scholars, Narad Pancharatra was compiled by Srila Vyasadeva. And it is so one of the definitions we heard was spanning 5 nights. So 5 nights of instructions from whom to whom. So they say these are the 5 nights of instructions by Lord Shiva to Narad. Right. So that's how it is called Pancharatra, and it covers other things also. So Prabhupada says that the Krishna consciousness movement follows the process of Pancharatrik Vidhi and Bhagavad Vidhi simultaneously, so that people can take advantage of the movement that makes the lives successful. Right. So Prabhupada says a lot, and he does not often speak a lot about the historical aspect of how things came to be in terms of practices. But according to Vedic scholars and scholars of Vaishnavism, the Bhagavad Vidhi is essentially the spontaneous devotion to the Lord. Right? So Bhagavad Vidhi does not concern itself too much with the following the rules and regulations. The Bhagavad Gita is composing songs, dancing, having a very, very close, personal, intimate relationship with the deities. So it is bhava, right? So it's a bona fide way of approaching the Lord. The Pancharatrik Vidhi is a more regulated. It's sadhakas, that there are rules and regulations. The Pancharatra talks about a lot of details, the rules and regulations of executing sadhana, Vaidhi Bhakti. And at some point of time, these two, they merged. So as I mentioned that the Vaishnav, the Bhagavad Vidhi predates, and the Pancharatrik Vidhi was being followed later on. And at some point of time, they merged, and by the merger of the two came Vaishnavism. So Vaishnavism is essentially a combination of, as Prabhupada says, Pancharatrik and Bhagavad Vidhi. And we see that in our lives also, right? So we follow the rules and regulations of deity worship, but we also chant spontaneously, we dance, we aspire to have a personal relationship, but we also aspire to follow the regulative principles of religion. That's where Prabhupada talks about how these are two, like the two tracks on which the railway runs, on which a train runs. That the Bhagavad Vidhi, it gives the rasa, the taste, the enjoyment, and the Pancharatrik Vidhi, it gives protection, so that people do not become sahajiyas, they don't become artificially uh, show artificial symptoms of their. So they are both supporting one. Also, interesting to note that Sripad Shankaracharya, he was a strong critic of the Pancharatrik uh, Vidhi. So he criticized it from the perspective of that the Pancharatrik Vidhi is also the so he supported it that it's a means to an end, right? So we know Adi Shankaracharya, he established temples and he encouraged deity worship, but his mood was that these are all means to an end. That one will worship the deities until one realizes that they are the Lord themselves, and then they do not need to worship deities, right? So he opposed devotional theism as an end in itself, right? He considered it only as a path. So he actually condemned the Pancharatrik as being non-Vedic, that it does not come from the Vedas. And in defense to that, Vaishnav acharyas like Sripad Ramaracharya, Madhavacharya, they prove that the Pancharatik Vidhi, it actually originates in the Shruti. And so it actually originates from the Vedas. And they make that connection between the two. So coming back to the verse over here, we see that what Narad Muni is teaching the residents of Bharatvarsha is the Pancharatrik Vidhi of service to Narnarayan, right? And then from the next verse onwards, we see the prayers by Narad Muni to Narnarayan. Okay, so let's go on to verse 11.
Let's offer my reciprocal obeisances unto Narayan, the best of all saintly persons, the supreme personality of Godhead. He is the most self-controlled and self-realized. He is free from false prestige, and he is the asset of a person who has no material possession. He is a spiritual master of all Paramsaha, who are the most exalted human beings, and he is a master of the self-realized. Let me offer my repeated obeisances at his lotus feet.
So there are 6 qualities of Narayan Rishi that are glorified over here. And you will see this mood generally that when one prays and glorifies qualities, then it is also with the intention of being able to develop the same qualities. So this does not mean the person is trying to become the Lord, but the fact that the person is inspired by those qualities and endeavors to develop them to some extent. So Nad Muni glorifies Narayan as Upashama Shilaya. So he is one who has mastered all his senses. Then Uparta Anantamaya, completely detached. He has no attachment for this material world. Then Akinchan Vitaya. So he is very similar to Akinchan, the term Akinchan Kochar used by Kunti Devi to glorify Krishna, that the only asset of the people who have no material possessions. Akinchan Vitaya, right? And here, of course, does not mean, so these terms are misinterpreted and become things like Daridra Narayan. Prabhupada used to be very upset when these terms are misinterpreted. So when it is said Akinchan Gochar or Akinchan Vitaya, the only asset of people who have material possessions, it means that the only assets of people who have no attractions to material possessions, who are completely detached from them. Right? Does not mean that that only the people who are poor have the right to perform bhakti. And so the term Darit Narayan came up. That's where that Darit Narayan, Darit means people who are poor, and Darit Narayan is that he is the Lord of the poor. And Prabhupada would say, how can he be Lord of the poor when his own spouse is his own consort is the goddess of fortune? So it does not make sense. The wife is the controller of all the wealth in the universe. And how can the husband be Daridra? Right? So these terms were coined. Mahatma Gandhi used it, but he didn't coin the term. The terms were coined a little bit before him. Not sure who did, but one of those at those times, those New Age wave that started off with Vivekanand and others who started the different movements. One of them coined it. So he's Akinchan Vitaya, that the only asset of people who are materially detached. Then Rishi, Rishabhaya. That so Rishi is saintly people, and Rishabh is the most exalted. So he is the most exalted of the saintly persons. Then Paramhamsa Param Guruve. So he is the spiritual master of the Paramhamsas, of the liberated persons. And Atmaram Adhipate. So Atmaram is one who is self-realized, and Adhipate is that he is the master of those who are self-realized. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, when he comments on this phrase Uparata Anantaya, so he translates it a little differently. He says that Uparata Anantaya means that a person who has no interest in Atma. So he says that this term, which by Srila Prabhupada and others is translated as Uparata Anantaya, is translated as one who has no attachment for this material world. Vishwanath Chakravarti translates it to as that he has no interest in materialistic people. Right? And obviously there is some amount of resonance in the two translations. Okay. Next verse 12. Gayati chedam kartasya sargadisho yona badyate nahanyate dehagato api dahikaha drastu nadragyasya guner vidushyate tasmai namo sakta vivikta sakshine.
Narada, the most powerful saintly sage, also worshipped Narayan by chanting the following mantra. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is the master of the creation, maintenance, and annihilation of this visible cosmic manifestation. Yet, he is completely free from false prestige. Also, to the foolish, he appears to have accepted a material body like us. He is unaffected by bodily tribulation like hunger, thirst, and fatigue. Also, he is the witness who see everything. His senses are unpolluted by the object he sees. Let me offer my respectful obeisances unto that, and attach pure witness of the Word, the Supreme Soul, the personality of Godhead.
So Narad Muni is continuing to glorify the qualities of Narnarayan, Rishi. So he says that he is Kartasya Sargadishu Yona Badhyate, that he performs creation, maintenance, and destruction, yet he is unattached. Then na hanyate dehagato pidahika, that even though dehagato, that even though he has accepted a material body, he is not material, because Nararayan appears as the son of Dharma and Prajapati Dharma and the daughter of Daksha by the name of Murti, right? And so people might say that born from material parents, what is the difference? So Sanat Muni says that he appears to have accepted a material body, right? But he's unaffected by the bodily tribulations. Then Drishtasur Nadragyasya Gunera Vidushyate, that although he is a witness to everything, his vision is unpolluted. And Tasmai Namo Sakto Vivikta Sakshine, that let me offer my obeisances unto the uncontaminated and unattached witness to the Lord. Right? So the essence of this verse is that talks about the fact that there is no tinge of materialism in Narnarayan. And even though they may be in the middle of the material world, performing strongly material activities, witnessing so many material activities that are going on, but they remain uncontaminated and unattached. Right? So one of the definitions of Krishna that comes early on is this, right? That even though he is appearing within the material world, he is not material. So as Paramatma, nobody could be more imbued in the material notion. The Paramatma is sitting right next to the Jiva. And what is the Paramatma witnessing? All the polluted desires of the Jiva, all the material desires of the Jiva. And when the Lord is not there as Paramatma, then the Lord is there as a incarnation. He's appearing as Lord Ram, Balram, Krishna. So he appears to take birth, he appears to grow, marry, have children, but nothing about him is material. And all the actions that are done by him, that he's creating the universe, maintaining, destroying it, but he is never affected by it. So Prabhupada says that now in this verse, he is more fully described. Krishna is the creator of the entire cosmic manifestation, yet he's unattached. If we were to construct a very tall skyscraper, we would be very much attached to it. But Krishna is so renounced that although he has created everything, he is not attached to anything. Na badhyate. Furthermore, although Krishna has a transcendental form, Sachidananda Vigraha, he is not disturbed by the bodily necessities of life, which are called dahika. He never is hungry, thirsty, or fatigued. Na hanyate dehakatopi dahike. Then again, since everything is Krishna's property, he sees everything and is present everywhere. But because his body is transcendental, he is above the vision, the objects of vision and the process of vision. When we see something beautiful, we are attracted. The sight of a beautiful woman immediately attracts a man, and the sight of a man naturally attracts a woman. Krishna, however, is transcendental to all these faults. Although he is the seer of everything, he is not afflicted by the faulty vision. Nadriga yasya gunera vidushyate. Therefore, although he is the witness and the seer, he is aloof from all affection for the activities. He sees, he is always unattached and separate. He is only a witness. Okay, going on to verse 30. Idam yogeshvara yoganaya punam hiranyagarbho bhagavan jagadayat yadhantakale tvaya nirgunamano bhaktya dadhito jita dushkalevara.
O my Lord, master of all mystic yoga, this is explanation of the yogic process spoken of by Lord Brahma, Hinyagarbha, who is self-realized. At the time of death, all yogis give up the natural body with full detachment simply by placing their mind at Lotus feet. This is the perfection of yoga.
So, as we had noted earlier on, that Nandana and Rishi, they are instructing on the process of Astanga Yoga, right? And Narad Muni is essentially speaking about that in the disciplic succession. So he's talking about the information that he receives from Lord Brahma, his spiritual, his own spiritual master, and talks about the process of the perfection of Astanga Yoga. So through Astanga Yoga, people get mystic potencies, long life. They're considered to be byproducts. One of the main destination of a successful yogi is that they become absorbed in Krishna and give up the body in that absorption, and that is the perfection of yoga. And Prabhupada says that the only purpose of life is to be fully absorbed in thoughts of Krishna and his form, pastime, activities, and qualities. If one is able to think of this way 24 hours a day, he is already liberated. Sarupena vivastriti. Right? So Prabhupada, as he often does, he equates this stage to that of a devotee. That an Astanga yogi may have to go through so many stages before they attain this perfection, but a devotee attains it naturally out of affection. They don't have to forcibly control their mind and the senses and meditate on Krishna. Because of their affection for Krishna, their mind automatically goes there. So the devotee is already situated at the stage of perfection, that which an Astanga yogi may reach. Okay, so okay, verse 14. Yeah, Prabhu, if you can read the translation.
Materialists are generally very attached to their present bodily comfort and to the bodily comfort they expect in the future. Therefore, they are always absorbed in thought of their wife, children, and wealth, and are afraid of giving up their bodies, which are full of stool and urine. If a person engaged in Krishna consciousness, however, is also a friend of giving up his body. What is the use of his having labored to study the Shastra? It was simply a waste of time.
So Narad Muni here is comparing the notion of a perfect Astanga yogi with a materialist. Right? So materialists are generally very attached to the bodily comforts, wives, children, wealth, etc., and their own body, which is say, full of stool and urine. If a person engaged in Krishna consciousness is also afraid of giving up his body, what is the use of his having labor to study the Shastras? It is simply a waste of time, right? So one's success or failure is determined by one's consciousness, right? So a person may be performing Prabhupada says Krishna consciousness over here could also stand for Astang Yoga. That if one is performing Astang Yoga or Krishna consciousness, and the goal of this is that one develops material detachment and attachment to Krishna. But despite this practice, if one is not displaying that, if one is displaying the opposite, spiritual material attachment and detachment from spiritual, then Nag Muni says that Shram eva kevalam. Right? There's another verse, right? That says Shram eva hi kevalam. What's that word? Atapumbir, Dvija Shrestha, Varnashram Vibhagashra. No, it's a different verse. But uh, uh, I think it appears first canto, second chapter. Where Sukdev Goswami says that one who follows the Varnashram system but does not develop detachment, it is a waste of time. Shrameva hi kevalam. Right? So Prabhupada says that at the time of death, a materialist thinks of his wife and children. He is absorbed in thinking how will they live and who will take care of them after he leaves. Consequently, he is never prepared to give up his body. Rather, he wants to continue to live in this body to serve his society, family, friends, and so on. Therefore, by practicing the mystic yoga system, one must become detached from bodily relationship. If, despite practicing Bhakti yoga and studying all the Vedic literature, one is afraid of giving up his bad body, which is the cause of all this suffering, what is the use of his attempts to advance in spiritual life? Right? So it said that in some context, it is said that death is the final exam. So everything that you have done in your life, it is tested at the time of death. How well have you been practicing your Krishna consciousness? Or for a yogi, how well has he been practicing the tenets of Astanga Yoga? Does the person give up his body in a joyful state, thinking of the Lord? Or does he give it in a stage of fear and resentment, concerned about the family and the sons and the body itself? Okay, moving on to verse 15. See how we're doing with time. Okay. Tannah Prabho Tvamakukaliverapitam Tvammayayam Mamatam Adoksaja Bhindyam Venashu Vayam Sudurbidam Videhi Yogam Tvaina Swabhavamiti.
Therefore, O Lord, O Transcendent, kindly help us by giving us the power to execute Bhakti Yoga so that we can control our restless mind and fix them upon you. We are all infected by your illusory energy. Therefore, we are very attached to the body, which is full of stool and urine, and to anything related with the body. Except for devotional service, there is no way to give up this attachment. Therefore, kindly bestow upon us this benediction.
So this is the conclusion of the prayer by Narad Muni to Nararayan. And he concludes by a plea that please bestow this benediction. What is the benediction that he is asking for? He says, kindly help us by giving us the power to execute Bhakti Yoga, right? So that we can control our restless mind and fix them upon you. It says, Tatna Prabhu Tvam Kukalevra Arpitam. That we are Kukalevra Arpitam. That we are infested in this kalevar. Kukalevar is actually means bad body, material body. And what else are we? What else? What is the other problem? Tvatmayaya. Tvatmayaya means that I am trapped in your illusory energy. What is the result of this? Aham mamatam. Aham mamatam means because of that, I am trapped in the conception of I and my. right? So what is the prayer? That please give. So Videhi Yogam, right? So contextually, Srila Prabhupada translates yoga to Bhakti Yoga. Could also be Astang Yoga. But when Astang Yoga is used in the connection with Lord, then it becomes Bhakti Yoga. Right? That's one thing interesting that we see, that any yoga that becomes centered around Krishna becomes Bhakti Yoga. It may be Mishra Yoga, right? It may be Jnana Mishra Yoga, Bhakti Mishra Yoga, or Astanga Mishra Yoga. But when Krishna is there, it becomes Bhakti Yoga. And when it is exclusively focused on Krishna, it becomes Keval Bhakti Yoga or Shuddha Bhakti Yoga. So even though Naranayan Muni recites, um, inspires people to take to Astanga Yoga, but very much like in the third canto when we read about the instructions of Lord Kapila upon Astanga Yoga, what did he say was the perfection of Astanga Yoga? To meditate on Krishna. So at that point, Astanga Yoga is Bhakti Yoga. Right? So when Prabhupada says that that Videhi Yogam is essentially, please give us the power to execute Bhakti Yoga, he's accurate in that understanding. So Prabhupada says, he quotes from the Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna says, Man manabhag man bhakto madhyaji mam namaskaru. Where the perfect yoga consists of always thinking of Krishna, always engaging in devotional service. We are very much attached to material enjoyment, but when we transfer the same attachment to Krishna, we transfers the path of liberation. One has to practice this yoga system and none other. Which yoga system? The yoga system of attachment to Krishna. What is it called? It is called Bhakti Yoga. Right. So the prayer and with Narad Muni begging Narayan Rishi to bestow Bhakti Yoga. Okay. So the next set of verses are a description of Bharatvarsha. There are actually no purports to these verses. I'll pause over here and before we go there, and not sure what happened here. Okay. So I'll see if there are any comments or any realizations you'd like to share.
Just one comment, Prabhu, about this verse 14. It said, what is the use of studying all the sastras if we are still afraid of death? It's like we call it acid test or litmus test. It's true because if we still have attachment with other stuff and we are afraid of death, that means we are not ready yet.
You're right, Prabhu. And actually, the fear of death is not something that only manifests at the time of death. Right? It's said that the fear of death is something that manifests at every moment of one's life. The fear of death is what determines each and every action. So everything that we do is basically in in recognition of this fear of death. When we built our bank balances, or when we stock on the food, or we make friends and enemies, everything that we do is basically uh, uh, to protect ourselves from death. So when that fear of death is eliminated, then it's not that only our consciousness at the time of dying is different. What it means is that a consciousness at every moment of time is different, because now we don't act based on the fear of death. So what do we act on? We act on the consciousness of the Atma, the Self, the Paramatma, or Krishna, right? So there's a different consciousness in which we act. So thank you for sharing that, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. I really appreciated this point that you made, that, our actions are aligned with that. But, as you were speaking, a thought came that was, how about when we don't do things, or when I don't do things that are in alignment with Krishna consciousness? Perhaps is it good to have like a healthy sense of healthy fear of death? So at least, we remember to do things. I was wondering if you had a thought.
It's a good point, Varshana, that is one of those things that um, if it is inevitable, then might as well make good use of it. So, considering the fact that we have a limited number of days, our end is inevitable, the human life is precious, so we can use that fear of death to increase our focus on perfecting our spiritual life. So this is the whole process of trying to use everything to advance in our in our spiritual life. And this is actually the injunctions that come in many contexts. That where was it said? I thought it was a little morbid, but it was. But I remember reading somewhere it is said that a person should constantly think of the death, and that will result in two things. It will result in the person developing detachment, because at death everything is forcibly taken away. So if you think that death is inevitable, and a lot of things that you are investing in from a material perspective, they don't become that important. And the second is, of course, when you think of death, you think of the fact that your life is limited. Might as well make the best use of a bad bargain, which is to develop Krishna consciousness. And interestingly, this is one of the reasons, and this comes in the next set of verses. Towards the end of the chapter, this comes that this is one of the reasons why the residents of Bharatvarsha are glorified by the Devas. They have a short life, right? They have a short life, so they can use, the Devas have long lives and more opportunities to be led astray. The humans have short, and now they're not speaking about Bharatvarsha, they're speaking about specifically the Earth planet, because in the other Varshas they have long life, but not in our planet. So they say, good, they have short lives. So if they're somehow able to align themselves, it's like you're walking on a razor's edge. And if you have to only walk 2 steps, it's easier, as opposed to walking 200 steps. More chances to fall off. So good point. Thank you for bringing it up. Okay, any other thoughts?
The one which in recent verse, Prabhu, where we are saying the Tatmaya, where we are trapped in I and mine concept of it. So even though when you're in the elevated, like sadhaka going into a later stages, is it not like if he has been given with some service and he is doing, is it, do I do that? Do we see that as a I and mine, or is it like a service or a mercy flowing in?
Good question, Prabhu. So the Aham Mameti is used in the context of generally enjoyment. That I'm the doer, I'm the enjoyer. This belongs to me, and I am the cause of it. Your question, I think, is that if a person is executing spiritual devotional service, then how does the notion of Aham Mameti transpose over there? Should the person say that I'm not doing the service and I should not get the benefit of the service? To some extent, yes, Prabhu. The notion is that one performs devotional service as on behalf of the spiritual master, right? So when a person performs any service, they're basically saying that I'm performing this service because I'm empowered by my spiritual master or the parampara to perform that service. So the notion of aham becomes diluted, and then whatever comes out of this service is for the pleasure of the Vaishnavas and Krishna. So the mameti part gets uh, gets diluted. However, even if one does spiritual devotional service with the notion of aham mameti, that is far superior to any other activities. Even the person does devotional service with the notion of that I'm such a good singer, and all these people are here just because of my singing, that itself uh, will eventually purify the person to a stage where they will say that I'm singing because my Guru Maharaj has inspired me, and all these people here to glorify the holy name, not to listen to my singing.
Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhu. Good question. Okay, so if there are no more questions on this topic, next set of, like I said, verses, there are a lot of names. So in these 5 verses from 16 to 20, there is a description of the mountains, the rivers, and the inhabitants of Bharatvarsha. So in verse 16, it gives the names of the mountains in Bharatvarsha. So Sayan Prabhu, whenever you're ready.
In the tract of land known as Bharatvarsha, as it Ilvatravarsha, there are many mountains and rivers. Some of the mountains are known as Malaya, Mangala Prastha, Mainaka, Trikakuta, Rishabha, Kujata, Kolaka, Saya, Devagiri, Rishyamukha, Sri Shaila, Venkata, Mahendra, Varidhara, Vindhya, Suktima, Riksagri, Parikyatra, Drona, Chitrakuta, Govardhana, Rikvataka, Kutabha, Nila, Gokamukha, Indrakila, and Kamagiri. Beside these, there are many other hills with many large and small rivers flowing from their slopes.
So these are the names of the different mountain ranges that are there. Some of them are familiar, like we know Govardhan, which is actually on our planet. Um, uh, then let's see, Rishimukha, right? Rishimukha, maybe somebody can correct me, but if my memory serves me right, this was the mountain where Sugriv took shelter because while he was cursed not to be able to step on this mountain. So other mountain ranges. Next verse will talk about the rivers in Bharatvarsha. So I'll just go ahead and read the translation. These next 2 verses, 17, 18. 2 of the rivers, the Brahmaputra and the Shona, are called nadas or main rivers. There are these are other great rivers. There are other great rivers that are very prominent. Chandravasha, Tamrapani, Avatoda, Kritamala, Vayasya, Kaveri, Veni, Pashavini, Shakarvarta, Tungabhadra, Krishnavenia, Bhimarthi, Godavari, Nirvindya, Payoshani, Tapi, Reva, Surasha, Narmada, Charmanvati, Mahanidhi, Vedasmriti, Rishikulya, Trishama, Kaushiki, Mandakini, Yamuna, Saraswati, Drishtavati, Gomati, Sarayu, Rodhaswati, Saptavati, Sushoma, Satradu, Chandrabhag, Marudvrada, Vitasa, Ashikini, and Vishwa. The inhabitants of Bharatvarsha are purified because they always remember these rivers. Sometimes they chant the names of these rivers as mantras, and sometimes they go directly to the rivers to touch them and bathe in them. Thus, the inhabitants of Bharatvarsha become purified. Right. So this is the reason why these names are given there. One might wonder that why Sukadev Goswami giving all these names to a person who's going to die in a few days, but because they are differently connected with various pastimes of the Lord, right? So here we recognize a few like Yamuna, and I think I saw Godavari. So these are in our planet. There are others in other planets. And Prabhupada said that the rivers are all transcendental. One can be purified by remembering them, touching them, or bathing in them. This practice is still going on. Okay. Verse 19. Please go ahead, Prabhu.
The people who take birth in this tract of land are divided according to the qualities of material nature. The mode of goodness, sattva-gun, passion, rajagun, and ignorance, tamagun. Some of them are born as exalted personalities, some are ordinary human beings, and some are extremely abominable. For in Bharatvarsh, one takes birth exactly according to one past karma. If one position is ascertained by a bona fide field master, and one is properly trained to engage in the service of the Lord, Vishnu, according to the four social divisions, Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Sudra, and the fourth spiritual division, Brahmachari, Grihastha, Vanpras, and Sannyas, one life becomes perfect.
So initially, there was a description of the mountains in Bharatvarsha, then the description of the rivers in Bharatvarsha. Now there's a description of the residents of Bharatvarsha. And Vishwanath Chakravarti says that now Sukdev Goswami is specifically talking about our earth planet. Initially, he was talking about Bharatvarsha that contains the 9 khandas. Now he says that this happens only in the area with a dimension of 1,000 yojanas. Right? So when we see the 9 khandas, then the southernmost khanda, each one of them is 1,000 yojanas, but it is described that this is the southernmost tip, which is the Bharat khanda. So he quotes Vishnu Puran. Vishnu Chakravarti says that in Vishnu Puran it is said that hear about the 9 divisions of Bharat. Right now he's talking about earth. So what are the 9 divisions? Indradweep, Kasheru, Tamravarna, Gabasthiman, Nagadweep, Soumya, Gandharva, Varun, and the 9th, which is bordering the ocean and is 1,000 yojanas from north to south. I'm sorry. So these 9 divisions are that of Bharatvarsha. And so he's talking about the 9 khandas going from north to south. And in the Vishnu Puran, the name is not given. So for the 8, there are name that is given. Indradweep, Kasheru, Tamravarna, Nagadweep. And then it says that the 9th, it just mentioned the 9th, which is bordering the ocean and is 1,000 yojana from north to south. So Vishwanath Chakravarti quotes another great commentator, Sridhar Swami, and he says Sridhar Swami's opinion is that Sagar Sambrata, bordering the oceans, means that being situated at the end of the ocean. So though the 9th division is not named, it is understood to be Navadvipa. So Navadvip is another name for earth. I know Mahaprabhu appeared in Navadvip, which is a place in India, But Navdvip is also another name for the Earth planet, because it's the ninth khanda, and it is bordered by the ocean, the saltwater ocean. So then there is further description of the divisions between in Navdvip, in the Earth planet. So in the east are the Kiratas, in the west are the Yavanas. The inhabitants of the east are Kamarapur, Orissa, Kalinga, Magad. Inhabitants in the south are Marukas and Malavas. O great sage, in Bharatvarsh there is Satya, Treta, Dwapar and Kali Yuga, which does not exist elsewhere. So it's understood that elsewhere there is the only age that exists is Treta Yuga. So in Vayu Puran, it is said that hear about the 9 divisions of Bharat. They border the ocean and one cannot go from one to another. So this addresses the question that sometimes people ask, that if there are 9 khandas that are divided by mountains, then we should be able to go to the other 8 khandas. We should be able to go to Indradweep or Kasheru or Tamravan. But by the Lord's arrangement, that is not possible, right? And in another lecture I was hearing on cosmology, the person was saying that perhaps it's because they exist in higher dimensions. So just like a person in 2 dimensions cannot go to the 3rd dimension, even though it's right there, similarly the person in 3 dimensions cannot go to the 4th or the 5th or the higher dimensions. But that was the person's opinion. There was no specific Vedic explanation to why, other than the fact that it's the Lord's will. So it said both by the Lord's will they cannot go to the other khandas, and by the Lord's will they can see the planets in the Svargalok. So one might say that, isn't it strange that I cannot see, forget about going, I can't even see the other khandas, but I can see Dhruva Loka. I can see the Saptarishis, right, that are that are even above the heavenly kingdom. And the explanation to that is that again that is by Lord's arrangement, so that one can determine auspicious and inauspicious times to perform Vedic activities. So when traditionally yagyas etc. were performed, then there is a class of priests. They would be, I guess, the equivalent to those who know the science of astronomy, and they would determine based on the conjunction of the planets what is the best time to start the yagya, finish the yagya, or perform other activities. So if they were not available, then the ability of the residents of Bharat Khanda to perform yagya, perform auspicious activities in which, so it said Kal, Desh and Patra is also important. So Kal being time, in which the calculation of the time is important, that would not be there. Now what else do they say? That over here, the people are divided into the Sato, Rajo and Tamo Guna. Right. So the people in this Bharat Khanda, they're undertaking many activities that are determined by the modes of material nature. Right. So Vishwanath Chakravarti says that this means that one takes in Bharatvarsha according to the past karma and the destination, heavenly, hellish, or human, is determined by their various gunas. Right. So how does one take birth in Bharatvarsha? Because of the past karma. Now we say that in the heavenly planets there is no creation of karma, but there is a depletion of karma. So when the karma is depleted to a point that they are no longer qualified to exist over there, they come down to Bharatvarsha. And then depending on what the karma remains, what the desire is, they acquire a certain body and a propensity. And what is the destination? The destination is also determined by the modes of material nature. So by the force of the residual karma, they acquire a certain combination of the modes. And by the force of the activities, they acquire a certain combination of modes. The first is during entering and the second is during existing. So this is the place where the law of karma is always active, right from birth to death and again from birth to death. Now it is also a place where one can attain liberation, right? So the word cha indicates that many forms of liberation are available over here, like merging into the Brahman or going into Vaikuntha or different forms of liberation. So the message is that for the residents of Bharat Khanda, there is easy access to liberation. Bhakti can be easily practiced along with other forms of pursuit. Right? And the next verse talks about more specifics about the liberation. So Prabhupada in the purport, he emphasizes on the need for varnashram system. He says that in the land of Bharatvarsha, the institution of varnashram dharma may be easily adopted. At the present moment, certain demoniac sections of the population of Bharatvarsha are disregarding the system of varnashram dharma. Because there is no institution to teach the people how to become brahmanas, kshatriyas, vaishyas, and shudras, or brahmacharis, grahasthas, vanaprasthas, and sannyasis, these demons want a classless society. Here Prabhupada is not talking about India, he's talking about Bharatvarsha as the earth planet. What does the result in? Chaotic conditions. In the name of secular government, unqualified people are taking the supreme governmental post. So this was one of Prabhupada's constant complaint, that he would call democracy as demon crazy. That when you go to the masses to elect a leader, then because the majority of the people are in the mode of ignorance, they will elect a person in their own image. And so essentially, you're working by the lowest common denomination. And Prabhupada's recommendation was the Vedic recommendation that people who are well trained and qualified in the Vedic ways should be given an opportunity to rule in what to consider to be a benevolent monarchy. Okay, so let's move on to the next verse, verse 20.
After many, many births, when the results of one pious activity is mature, one gets an opportunity to associate with few devotees. Then one is able to cut the knot of bondage to ignorance, which bound him because of varied fruitive activities. As a result of associating with devotees, one gradually renders service to Lord Vasudeva, who is transcendental, free from attachment to the material world. Beyond the mind and words, and independent of everything else, that Bhakti Yoga devotional service to Lord Vasudeva is a real path of liberation.
So previous verse spoke about the fact that liberation is easily accessible in Bharat Khanda. This verse talks about the details of the nature of that liberation and when does it occur, right? So it describes the Lord as being full of wonderful qualities. And because of this wonderful quality, he attracts the minds of everyone. And because there is the attracted and the attracted, there is no oneness between the Lord and the Jiva. But there is oneness in service with the Jiva. There is oneness of interest. That there is unity in the interest of the Lord and the Jiva. There is unity in service, but not unity in person. And so his spiritual qualities cannot be described in material terms like attraction. So this is Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur speaking, that even though we describe the Lord as having eyes like lotus petals, Radha Govind Maharaj once he quotes a commentator who's lamenting, and so the commentator is a poet who describes the Lord in poetic terms, that his eyes are like lotus petals and his color is like the hue of the clouds. And he says, I know that when I see the Lord, I will beat myself. That how can I have compared the extraordinary beauty of the Lord with something material? How can I compare the eyes of the Lord with just the lotus petals? Who cares about the lotus petals? And the lotus petals are actually ugly when compared to the eyes of the Lord. So Vishnu Chakravarti makes the same point that the spiritual qualities cannot be described in material terms. Even at the destruction of the universe, his form and qualities remain. Since he is the abode of prema, he is the soul of all beings, he is also the super soul, right? So Vishnu Chakravarti talks about the fact of the qualitative oneness and the quantitative difference, right? That he is the the fact that his form and qualities remain after the destruction of the universe means that he is not material. The fact that he is the abode of prema means that devotional service will transcend all material creation and destruction. It is eternal. The fact that he is the soul and also the super soul means that qualitatively he is the soul, but quantitatively separate. He is the super soul and the jiva is the soul. So because of all these exemplary quantities, there is nobody who is more worthy of worship than Vasudeva, the son of Vasudeva. Right? So Vishnu Chakravarti, he's a little bit of a rasaka, in the sense he's poetic. He says that Bhakti Yoga without material cause is the swarup of Apavarga. So Apavarga means liberation. Right? Varga means contamination. Being controlled in Apavarga means being liberated. So he is without material cause and the swarup of liberation. So this liberation and destruction of avidya, it is all included in bhakti. So bhakti is the true apavarga. It is the true liberation. And then finally, what does the verse says? That this takes place in the association of devotees. Right? So as a result of associating with devotees, one gradually renders service to Lord Vasudeva, who is transcendental, free from attachment to the material world, beyond the minds and words and independent of everyone. That Bhakti Yoga devotional service to Lord Vasudeva is the real path of liberation. Right? Prabhupada comments on this work saying that devotional service is actual liberation. When one is attracted by the beauty of the Lord and his mind is always engaged at the Lord's lotus feet, he is no longer interested in subjects that do not help him in self-realization. In other words, he loses all attraction for material activities. In Taittiriya Upanishad, it is said, Esha haya evandyati yada evasham etasim na drishya. A living entity becomes established in a spiritual blissful life when he fully understands that his happiness depends on spiritual self-realization, which is the basic principle of Ananda. Right? So now that there has been this, so far we have seen what we have seen is a description of the human form of life in Bharatvarsha. That how they're controlled by the modes. There is birth and death. How there is the varnashram system over here, how all this together can be used to get liberation through the practice of Bhakti Yoga, right? So this is a description of the state of affairs in Bharatvarsha. The next set of verses will be the glorification of the residents of Bharatvarsha. Right? Having described the residents of Bharatvarsha, Sukadeva Goswami now talks about what do the residents of the other planets think about the residents of Bharatvarsha. Okay, so I think we should continue. Okay, so verse 21. Eta Etadeva hideva gayanti aho amesham kimakari shobhanam prasanayesham sviduta swayam hari ye rajanma labadam nishubhar bharatarje mukund seva upayakam sparahinah.
Since the human form of life is a sublime position for spiritual realization, all the demigods in heaven speak in this way. How wonderful it is for this human being to have been born in the land of Bharatvarsh. They must have executed past acts of austerity in the past. Or the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself must have been pleased with them. Otherwise, how could they engage in devotional service in so many ways? We demigods can only aspire to achieve human birth in Bharatvarsha to execute devotional service, but these human beings are already engaged there.
Okay, so this is wonderful glorification of the residence of Bharat Khanda by the Devas, by the residents of Swarga. Right? So they talk about, so they glorify this birth and they talk about two factors that are contributors to this fortunate event. What's the fortunate event? Taking birth in Bharat Khanda. So one, they say past piety, right? So because of, he said they must have executed pious acts of austerity in the past, right? One reason. And the second is mercy of the Lord. So they say all the Supreme Lord or Personality of Godhead must have been pleased with them, right? So one sees that even when the impious take birth on the earth planet, it is a result of the mercy of the Lord. So they may be lacking piety, or they may not be manifesting the piety that they have, but they're manifesting the mercy of the Lord. And the mercy of the Lord is bestowed on those who have executed devotional service in the past. Right? So essentially the purport is that either those who were performing, because Krishna by nature is impartial, like Samom Sarvbhuteshu, right? He's the same to everyone. Why, if considering that birth in this earth planet is glorious, why not give everybody an opportunity? So there must be something that must be biasing the Lord towards a certain set of jivas. Right? And one of them is or the main one is that these are those who have to some extent performed devotional service in the past. So Vishnu Chakravarti says that one can actually understand that considering the greatness of the birth in the earth planet, piety in itself will never be sufficient to take that birth. Right? And this is a little bit different from the notion that we see in Bhagavad Gita, where Punyakshina, where, when the pious credits of the devas are exhausted, they fall to the earth planet. Vishnu Chakravarti is saying is that piety itself is not sufficient. The mercy of the Lord should have been there. And where does the mercy come? Where there is bhakti. So, for those who have been performing devotional service and attracting the mercy of the Lord gives them this opportunity to take birth in the earth planet. Right? So, the devas now they give themselves an example of it, that one takes birth. So they say we demigods can only aspire to achieve human births in Bharatvarsha to execute devotional service. But these human beings are already engaged there, right? So they give them some example that they take birth as demigods as a result of pious activities, right? We know that one result of karma kand is elevation to the heavenly planets. So they take birth in the heavenly planets because of piety. So they're saying, why don't we take birth in the earth planet? Because piety in itself is not sufficient to take birth over here. Because somehow or the other, they have not received the mercy of the Lord, right? And they say it's good fortune we desire, but we cannot achieve that birth, right? So the devas are glorifying, and it's kind of interesting because in many connections, the devas consider the humans to be abominable. Like Radha Govind Maharaj makes this point that they consider, just like we consider like spiders and cockroaches crawling on the ground, that's how the devas regard us. That we have bodies that are dirty, we perspire, we produce stool and urine, and our consciousness is polluted. But here we see the devas looking at it from a different perspective. And the way we reconcile the two is that this glorification is for those who make use of the human form of life on the earth planet to execute devotional service. If one does not, then yes, that's what they become. They essentially become like fallen animals. But if they're able to execute devotional service, then they attract the admiration of the devas. So it is said that that when humans begin to perform pious activities, then the devas place many obstacles on their path. Because one is to test them, and secondly, they don't want them to come to the heavenly kingdom. It's theirs, right? But when they perform devotional service, then the devas, they work to remove obstacles because of this inherent attraction to spirituality in them. Srila Prabhupada talks he narrows the context over here. He talks about India actually. So he quotes Chaitanya Charitamrita. Bharat bhumite haile manushya janmayara janma sarthak kare karo para upkara. One who has taken birth as a human being in the land of India should make his life successful and work for the benefit of all people. There are many facilities in India, Bharatvarsha, for executing devotional service. In Bharatvarsha, all the acharyas contributed the experience, and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu personally appeared to teach the people of Bharatvarsha how to progress in spiritual life and be fixed in devotional service to the Lord. From all points of view, Bharatvarsha is a special land where one can easily understand the process of devotional service and adopt it to make his life successful. If one makes this life successful in devotional service and preaches devotional service in other parts of the world, people throughout the world will actually benefit. Okay. And in the next verses, the devas will talk about the problems that they have in the heavenly kingdom. But I will end over here because I'm a little bit over time and see if you have any closing thoughts or questions or comments. Okay, if not, then we'll end over here. Thank you so much. वाञ्छकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्येव च पतितनाम पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। अनंत कोटि वैष्णववृंद की जय। शिला प्रभुपाद की जय। हाय गौर प्रेमानंद। हरि हरे कृष्णा। Thank you very much.